त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौली स्फुरत् तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमां मीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यामलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं घटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम् सततज्वर विषमज्वर ग्रह नक्षत्र दोषाञ्चान्या हर हर काली सर सर गौरी क्रमधम विद्ये आले माले काले बन्धे भज भज विद्ये मख मख विद्ये नाशय नाशय पापम् हर हर दुःस्वप्नं विध्वंसय विध्वंसय
Namaste all, and welcome to Indica Yoga's Global Festival of Yoga, Day 10, 2020. Until now, we have had a lot of different topics covered in the field of yoga and wellness. And this evening, we embark on a new aspect, and that is the brain. Dr. Frederick Travis from the Maharishi University in Iowa will be talking about yoga, meditation, and the brain. Dr. Frederick Travis has received his master's and PhD in psychology from Maharishi International University in 1988. And he later had a 2-year postdoctoral position at the UC Davis and the VA Medical Center in Martinez, California, with Dr. Irwin Feinberg, where he explored brain changes during sleep. And for those of you who don't know, UC Davis is one of the top universities in the United States. It's a huge research facility, and the Veterans Association Medical Center in Martinez, California is also a very well-renowned institution. So at the conclusion of his postdoctoral position in 1990, he returned back to Maharishi International University to direct research at the Center for Brain, Consciousness, and Cognition. Since then, he has authored over 80 papers and conference presentations. Some of his research interests include psychophysiological correlates of higher states of consciousness, psychophysiological correlates of reading Vedic literature, effects on transcendental meditation, or TM, practice on child development, and also on promoting healthy aging. So I think he has a vast knowledge and exposure to issues concerning people of all ages and from all across the world. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Frederick. And thank you so much for being here with us at Indica Yoga today. And we are excited for your talk.
Thank you, Dev. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored to be part of your month-long celebration of yoga. What I'll be doing is looking at meditation, yoga, and the brain. And let's begin. What is yoga? How do we define it? Well, Maharishi Patanjali wrote the book on yoga, Yoga Sutra. And in it, he defined yoga in this way. Yogas chitta vritti narodaha. Yoga is union. It's union of individual self with a universal self, individual with that which is cosmic. Chitta is mind. Vritti are fluctuations of the mind. Fluctuations of the mind are not only expressed thoughts, but also the fine movement within the mind. The rodhaha, which is the verb, can be defined in many different ways. One way to define it is as control, and this is an acceptable definition. And if we use that definition, we would understand yoga to be the control of the fluctuations of the mind. Notice that with this definition, yoga becomes something that you do. It requires effort. It requires hard work. And with this understanding, the Ashtanga yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, would be considered separate steps, yama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. Each step is something that you would work on independent of the others. And after some time, you might experience samadhi. So that's one understanding of yoga. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi uses a different translation of the word narodaha, that is complete settling. With that definition, notice how yoga is described. Yoga is the complete settling of the fluctuations of the mind. And we can look at these two definitions. You notice when yoga is controlled, then the Yoga Sutra is a how-to book. It's things that you do that leads to the state of yoga. If you look at Narodaha as complete settling, then the Yoga Sutra is a description of the state of yoga. The Yoga Sutra are not things that you do, but it's describing a state of being. Let's look at yoga relative to what we're experiencing right now, which is waking, sleeping, dreaming. Now, in this 2x2 grid, we have sense of self, yes or no, and thoughts. By thoughts, I mean any mental content. So thoughts can be feelings, thoughts can be objective experience, thoughts can be planning. So the presence or the absence of all mental activity. So let's look at this bottom left hand. cell. No self-awareness, no thoughts. Now let you think a moment. What state of consciousness would go there? No sense of self, no mental activity, no perceptions. You're probably all thinking, yes, sleep. Now, sleep is a state in which we sleep like a log. There's no self-awareness. There's no awareness of the outside world, no awareness of the inside world. It's just a block of time, a break in time. Let's look at this upper right one. Self-awareness, yes, and thoughts, yes. Now, dreaming, waking, yoga. I'm sure most of you had said it's waking. It's what we're in right now. Right now, there's the video, there's the audio from the video, there's your computer, there's a room around your computer. At the same time, you're there. You're experiencing this. You're reflecting on the outside thoughts. And indeed, what we have in waking state is we have the complete mixing of self and object. And you can't even consider yourself independent of the object. If you try to think of yourself, you always see yourself in activity, thinking, feeling, the core of experience, and so on. This is the nature of waking state. Let's look at the upper left cell. Self-awareness, yes. Self-awareness, no. Thoughts, yes. I'd like to suggest that this is dream state of consciousness. In dream state, we have illusory dream images. They're very gripping. They're very rich in experience and movement. And the sense of self, if it's there at all, is very fragile. That leaves this bottom right-hand cell. Sense of self, yes. Thoughts, no. Now, I want to bring out that whatever is in this cell is unlike waking, sleeping, or dreaming. Whatever is in this cell is not just some altered state of waking. Rather, it's a state unique unto itself. It's a state whose subject-object relationship is fundamentally different than what we're experiencing typically throughout the day, waking, sleeping, dreaming, waking, sleeping, and dreaming. The state of pure self-awareness is the state of yoga. Yoga is the complete settling of the activity of the mind. And when the mind has completely settled, what's left, what we experience is our inner core, which is pure self-awareness. So what do meditations experience tell us about this state of yoga? Indeed, those of you familiar with the Upanishad know the yoga, the state of pure self-awareness is the fourth. Transcendental consciousness. It's our Atma. What do states of consciousness tell us? What do meditations tell us about the state of yoga? How do meditations lead to this state of yoga? So this is the second point. Meditations, I think, are similar in that they explore the structure of conscious experience. They're exploring what is there in thought, what is underlying thought, what is the field which in thoughts explore. And I'd like to suggest there's three aspects that any experience we have. One aspect is the object that we're experiencing. It could be thoughts, it could be feelings. The second, in terms of any conscious experience, is a process. How do we connect with the object, with the outside world? The third is the knower. It's we who are having the experience. And the structure of conscious experience includes all of these three together. What we'll find is some meditations focus on the object of conscious experience. Some meditations focus on the process. Some meditations focus on the subject. itself. So now, what I'm going to do is give you a description of a meditation practice. I'll let you read it, and I want you to think what stands out. What are the descriptions that are most salient, which stand out in this description of meditation? And we'll do this 3 times. So here's the first one. Again, I'll let you read it. What stands out as you read this? Focus seems one primary part. Sharp point of focus. Notice what is in the sharp point of focus. So the point of focus is where their attention is. What is in this sharp point of focus is the up and down rhythm of each breathing moment, the abdomen moving in and out, or the air on top of the nostrils. You notice there's no sense of the rest of the body. There's no sense of anything else in the environment. It's purely the object. And the intent is not to describe it, to think about it, to fix it, to reflect on it. It's just to enjoy the essence, the beingness of that object of the breath going in and out, in and out. I suggest this is this is a description of Vipassana meditation, breath meditation. And I suggest that this is probing the object of experience. In this case, it's just the breath moving in and out. Vipassana and other meditations that involve focus are in a category of meditations called focused attention. Focused attention. And what's found, the brain pattern found when you're focusing the mind, that's when you're keeping one experience in mind, not letting the mind move. It's a very fast brainwave. The name is called gamma, and the frequency is 20 to 50 times per second. This is actually a picture of gamma waves. And meditations in focus attention, which have this gamma EEG, include Zen, compassion meditation, Vipassana, and also Qigong. This is a picture of the gamma EEG. This is during compassion meditation. At this point here, the person is sitting resting. At this point, they begin their meditation on loving kindness and compassion. And this very fast activity, this is a raw record. This is looking at the first 2-3 minutes of meditation. This fast activity is the gamma activity that I mentioned. And it's expected to see that because that's the type of process that meditation is using. It's controlling the mind, it's keeping it from moving. So that's the first category, focus attention. Ready for the next? Okay, so here's the next. Again, I'll let you read it. So what stands out for you? Notice there's also breath, but the attention on the breath is different. I focus solely on respiration, not to control it. It just gives an object for the mind to rest upon. Now, as they're doing this, the mind becomes a flip book of memories. You notice in the first example, there's one experience, the abdomen moving in and out. In this experience, there's just a flood of experiences, a flip book of memories. You know, a flip book, you have a series of index cards, and there's an image on it. As you flip through the index card, you see the image moving. This is the analogy they're giving, a flip book of memories, just one after another after another. Now, where is the self in this experience? Let's see what they say. As I do this, I turn page by page. I find I'm reprocessing who I am. So there's a sense of self in this, but notice it's not a pure sense of self. It's self relative to ongoing experience. I'm reprocessing who I am. In this meditation, the I is very much intimately connected with the object. This is an experience of mindfulness meditation. Notice this is probing this link between knower and known. It's probing, how do I relate? And all of these experiences pass through an awareness. You maintain non-reactive, non-judgmental awareness. You're aware of what's happening moment by moment. But it's always you and what's happening moment by moment. You're exploring that relationship with you and what's ongoing. Now, when you're doing this type of mental processing, the brainwave you see is different. It's called theta. Goes up in the frequency is 4 to 8 cycles per second. And also in the back of the brain, you see the higher end of alpha. Frequency is 10 to 12 cycles per second. Theta is seen whenever you're thinking inside, whenever you're following some stream of mental thought, you'll see theta. Mindfulness is in a second category called open monitoring. Open monitoring, you're just observing what's going on. Now these brainwave frequency, theta and alpha is seen in mindfulness, also zazen. In this case, you're just allowing the silence to flow into silence, but the attention is on that process. Non-directed meditation, also saharaj. Here's an example of what the brainwave looks like. On the left is the actual brainwave. Each line is a different point on the scalp. These very big waves you see here are eye blinks, so we can overlook those. This point here is the theta burst that they're talking about. See, the line here is the indicate, so it's here in the front, it's also here in the front. These are power maps, so each head is a different frequency band. And we see that this is Zen meditation, there's increased theta activity in the front of the brain. It actually is given a name, frontal midline theta. And frontal midline theta is produced from the part of the brain that directs attention. It's called the anterior cingulate gyrus. And when your attention is constantly involved in that, going back from one experience to another, it's understandable why this EEG pattern is seen. So we have two, focus, attention, open monitoring. Ready for the last one? So again, read it and just what stands out in this meditation. So you may be thinking, well, this one isn't characterized by either focus or mental activity, and indeed is characterized by silence. Thoughts becoming secondary, underlying pervasive inner silence becoming more primary. What we're looking at is a crossfade, where all of the mental chatter is becoming less. It's gripping the attention less. And inner silence, which is always there, is beginning to pervade experience. Notice this description also describes an I who is involved in that experience. Notice how they describe themselves. Many times, all mental activity settles to silence. I am completely whole and at peace. This is the part of you that's outside of time and space. This is the experience of yoga. The part of the complete settling of the activity of the mind. The part of you that's whole, that's immovable, that's full. This is the experience during this meditation. This was a description of transcendental meditation practice. Transcendental meditation is a meditation that probes the subject. Notice thoughts become secondary, inner silence becomes more primary. The inner silence is a fundamental nature of who we are. It's that screen of awareness upon which all experiences fall. This is in a third meditation category called automatic self-transcending. It has its own brainwave pattern. The name is alpha. It's alpha 1 because it's the lower end of the alpha band. It's in the front. Frequency is 8 to 10 cycles per second. This is what it can look like. Now, this word automatic is extremely important in this category because if the activity of the mind is going to settle down, there cannot be any control of the mind. There cannot be any anticipation. There cannot be any direction of the mind. There cannot be any emotional regulation. There cannot be any attention control. Because all of that is individual, localized activity. It will not let the mind just naturally settle down. So this automatic term in this category is critical. These meditations need to be automatic where you start from thinking and then the mind just settles to being, to the state of yoga. And this brainwave pattern is seen in transcendental meditation after just a few weeks practice. And this is important. It's also seen in a case study of a Qigong master, 45 years. And in a single study with 25 Zen Buddhist priests who've been practicing their meditation for 24 years. This brings up automaticity. What does that mean? How can we gain automaticity? Automaticity means it goes by itself. Well, psychology has studied automatic and controlled processes for 40 years. And what they find is any controlled process, any process which does involve effort, individual, trying, can become automatic after practicing it over and over and over and over and over. Practicing it enough makes it automatic, so you start the procedure, and then what happens is the next steps of the procedure automatically unfold. So that's what we're seeing in these other two studies. The Qigong master, when he started his practice, he had gamma, because Qigong is a controlled process of moving qi through the body. Doing this for 45 years, the process became automatic. He was actually able to settle, to experience just inner silence, inner transcendence through his long practice. Transcendental meditation, notice we see this pattern in just a few weeks. That's because transcendental meditation, the revival of what we're known now as transcendental meditation, uses the natural tendency of the mind to take the mind within. And that's what you learn when you learn transcendental meditation practice. That is what has been revived by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, that the process of meditation can be effortless, that it can go by its own nature, that dhyan can automatically move to samadhi because that's where the mind wants to go. The mind wants to expand. The mind doesn't like boundaries. The mind wants to settle into this state of yoga, of evenness, of wholeness, of immovability. So once you've taken there once, and that's what happens when you learn transcendental meditation practice, then you're able to allow the mind to naturally go there in every experience. That's why even after just a few weeks, we see this marker of automatic self-transcending, this brain marker. Because if it's a natural process, it doesn't take a lot of practice. If it's a natural process, all you do is begin and allow nature to unfold. So let's explore the brainwaves of transcending, of experiencing this state of yoga during meditation practice. This are brainwaves during transcendental meditation practice. The x-axis is time. Each column is a second. Each line is a different part of the scalp where EEG is being recorded. So each line is the raw electrical activity. Notice this here. Let's count this. It goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is a 9 cycle per second wave. This is the alpha 1. Notice you see it in all parts of the brain. You see it in all parts of the brain because the brain, the mind, has settled to their ground state of silence, the state of yoga. Let's continue to explore this brain state. But before we do that, I'd just like to summarize categories of meditation because this is such an important concept. And I'm doing it in terms of effort, high effort to low effort. We talked about focused attention, where we see gamma. This is the highest effort, where there's intentional control, the mind cannot move. Open monitoring, where there's less effort than in focused attention. And what these meditations are doing is they're teaching you new ways to use your mind. Your mind's a tool. These meditations are teaching you how to use the tool of your mind in different ways, how to control the mind, how to just be mindful in situations. Automatic self-transcending is least effort. Indeed, research suggests it may even be effortless, that it's automatic, it goes by itself. And with this meditations in this category, they don't teach you new ways to use your mind, they give you the experience of the state of yoga. The experience of samadhi, the experience of pure self-awareness. And to understand how all these meditations might interact, I like to use the analogy. Here we have a kitchen. You go into the kitchen and you're the new person and the chef says, okay, here's a knife, this is how you hold it. This is how you use it to cut carrots and broccoli and cauliflower and so on. You learn how to use the knife. But also the chef is going to teach you how to sharpen the knife. And then everything else you do is smoother. Everything else you do gives greater fulfillment. Other meditations, you're learning as if how to use the knife, learning how to use your mind. Transcendental meditation is like sharpening the knife. You're actually enhancing the quality of consciousness, so everything that you do is being transformed. Let's go a little bit more deeply into brain patterns during transcendental meditation, during this experience of the state of yoga. So to do that, here's the brain. The brain's looking to your right. This red area that I just circled is called the thalamus. The thalamus is a switchboard, and there's 2 different circuits that go through the thalamus. One brings in outside information, content, so from the eyes, ears, and so on. The thalamus sends a signal to the surface of the brain sends it back, and you get a neural loop. This neural loop is a neural representation of the outside world. Now there's a second circuit that goes through the thalamus. This is bringing in inside arousal, inside activation, inside wakefulness circuits. It also goes to the thalamus, and the thalamus also creates loops with the cortex, but what these loops maintain is wakefulness. Now neurosciences actually stained and brought out what are the different nuclei. One are called the core nuclei, and this brings in content. The other are the matrix, which are spread throughout the thalamus, and this has to do with wakefulness. Now, what we do in transcendental meditation is we learn how to take a specific thought, and this is a mantra. The mantras we use in transcendental meditation are not phrases, they don't have meaning to them, but they're just syllable sounds. And what the sound does is it facilitates the mind beginning to settle down. And what happens is that sound of the mantra begins to change. We appreciate it in more abstract levels. But the wakefulness circuits remain. And this is the brain circuitry which is underlying that experience of the complete settling of the activity of the mind. Other meditations, focus attention, you have the content is also maintained, and you're putting full attention on it. The wakefulness circuits, remember the person said, the environment's gone, everything's gone, it's just the content. The entire attention is here on the content. Mindfulness is looking at what's the relationship between wakefulness and the content. Transcending is bringing the state of yoga. And the value of this is such a key point, is our brain is a river and not a rock. Our brain is a self-adapting organ. It's built to change. It doesn't have a crystalline structure. 70% of your brain connections change every day. After every day of being part of this global international yoga conference, your brain has a different set of connections because of where your attention has been. So when we allow the mind to go to the state of yoga during meditation practice, these wakefulness circuits begin to be self-sustaining. And we see that in the brain waves. It takes about 1/10 of a second for a loop to go up and come back. So in a second, it goes up 10 times. And that's why we see this particular brain wave, 8 to 10 cycles per second. Also notice that these loops are coordinated from the thalamus. That means the electrical activity on the surface of the brain would be connected, coordinated. In EEG, it's called coherence. Let's look at a coherence map. This is during TM. Top line, top row is top of the brain, bottom row is front of the brain. Dots are where we have sensors to record brain waves. There's a line between dots suggesting what is the coherence of this point with this point, meaning what is the similarity of brain functioning? Now, why is this important? Well, if one part of the brain, if the electrical activity, the rising and falling, the frequency is similar to another part of the brain, it indicates those two parts of the brain are working together. And this is what research shows. If it's a sensory motor task versus the back part of the brain, the sensory area is coherent. And then we see the top part of the brain, the motor system is coherent because 100 billion brain cells are being put together to do some specific task. And this is done through brain circuitry, and it's reflected in the EEG signature, the coherence. So we notice in the process of transcending, there's not coherence up here in gamma. If you're doing Vipassana, you would have coherence there. It'd be localized areas because you're taking a localized point. Mindfulness, you'd have more theta, alpha coherence. Here during transcendental meditation practice, we see a lot of coherence, especially in the front of the brain. Now, one other point, the color of the line indicates the degree of coherence. If there's no line, it's less than 70%. If there's a light line like here, it's about 70. If there's a dark line, it's 90% or higher. What we're seeing is the whole front part of the brain is beginning to function as one. Front part of the brain is important. That's your executive center, sense of self, moral reasoning, planning. That's where you keep the big picture. And that part of brain functioning is completely integrated in the experience of yoga, in the experience of samadhi, in the experience of just complete settling of the activity of the mind. There's wakefulness there. There's not activity going on, but there's just wakefulness, alertness. Now remember I said that TM, we see this brainwave pattern in a few weeks. We see that here. The top row is someone who's been, well, we have two rows here. One row is a person during their transcendental meditation practice, been meditating for 6 months. Another row, again, is during transcendental meditation practice, but been meditating for 24 years. Now, first, do you see any difference? Well, maybe some little difference here, but in this frequency of transcending, you see it's very, very similar. And the top person is the person practicing TM for 6 months. Bottom person practicing TM for 24 years. This is bringing out that point of automaticity. How automaticity is built into transcendental meditation practice, so it allows the practitioner to experience the state of yoga very soon in their meditation career, first couple of days or weeks. And then very soon in each session. And so you can have that experience of wholeness many times during each session. And then over time, let's see what happens. Here we have, during TM practice, they look the same. I'm going to show you the two rows again, but now their eyes are open. Now they're doing a computer task. They're thinking, they're processing, they're responding. Which one do you think is a 24-year TM practitioner? I'll let you think a moment. Which one do you think has been settling, complete settling of activity of the mind, and then out into activity? Complete settling during TM practice, out into activity. And every time experiencing the state of yoga, beginning to strengthen those circuits, you're probably guessing it must be the top person. And you're right. Notice now those EEG patterns seen when the eyes are closed, transcending, are seen in activity. This is the integration of the state of yoga into daily activity. Now, I show this to my college students, and some of them aren't 24 years old, and so this doesn't make a real big impression. This is research we looked over 1 year. At my university, Maharishi International University, we actually practice transcendental meditation as part of the curriculum. Everyone meditates in their own rooms in the morning. We come to class. We're in class from 10 to 3. We're doing exercises. We're working with knowledge. And then we stop at 3 o'clock and everyone closes their eyes and we transcend together. We're doing that because what the transcending is doing is exploring ourselves. In class, we're only exploring outer things or things in the mind, but we don't explore who we are fundamentally. And so at the end of class, after we've looked at things, we transcend. Yes, the person in the chat says, but the monkey mind. What about the monkey mind? I'm going to just take a note here. Mind's like a monkey. How do you control a monkey? Well, there's many ways, but two fundamental ways. One is to chain it down. One is to hide behind a tree and ambush it and wrestle it to the ground. But it's always going to be trying to move. Another way is to think, what do monkeys like? Monkeys like bananas. Put a bunch of bananas outside your door. You're going to have all the monkeys in the world outside your door. The mind is constantly moving, but it's moving because it wants to grow. It's exploring. It's curious. It doesn't like boundaries. It wants to always get the bigger picture. This experience of the state of yoga, in transcendental meditation, we call it pure consciousness. It's a state of Atma, it's samadhi. This is what the mind wants. The mind wants to be free of boundaries. The mind wants to be whole. The mind wants to be full. It's like putting the bananas out and catching the monkey. Once you've been taken to that state during personal instruction in transcendental meditation, and then the mind will go there by itself. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we saw why the 6-month meditator, during their TM practice, they look the same as a 24-year meditator. Let's look at this in a more micro point. Remember I said all students practice TM, but we have 30% of our students come to MIU, they haven't learned to meditate yet. So what I did is I contacted them. I recorded their brain waves with eyes closed, and then recorded their brain waves when they were doing the task. Then they were trained in TM practice. 2 months later, we looked at EEG again, and now this purple dot is during TM practice. Again, the lime green dot is eyes open task. This difference between TM and eyes closed has been reported many times because with eyes closed, the mind is moving. And so there's localized patches of coherence, but you don't see the full coherence. Look at 6 months and 12 months. During the TM practice, they reach the same high level of coherence. Notice the difference is seen in activity. They reach the state of yoga during their meditation practice, and they integrate the state of yoga as they come out into activity. What we're seeing here is growth of higher states of consciousness. The fourth, Turiya Chaitana, alternating that with waking, gives the fifth state, Turiya Chaitana. With this state of yoga, pure consciousness is a constant companion. This is growth of higher states of consciousness. What I think I'll do is I'll just so what do higher states of consciousness look like? What does a state of yoga look like? This is during sleep. These are people reporting inner wakefulness throughout the night. 11, and we call it, this is in the TM model is called cosmic consciousness, or CC. 11 subjects practicing TM but not reporting CC. 11 subjects not practicing any meditation. This is during stage 4 sleep. This is the deepest part of sleep. This is a second here. It's about 1 centimeter. What we see is this is the delta activity of deep sleep. This is the body repairing itself. The 2 lines underneath are people reporting inner wakefulness throughout the night. That is that state of yoga, of union, of wholeness, even as the body is sleeping. We see the same amount of delta activity because that's the brain just repairing itself from its daily activity. But you notice you could say it's more ragged. This is smooth. It's just a line going down. But this is more ragged. Let's count it. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You notice there's a 10 cycle per second wave along with a 1 cycle per second wave. Do you see this? There's the brain waves of sleep, 1 cycle per second, and the brain waves of transcending, of experiencing that state of yoga, 10 cycles per second. They're there at the same time when the person is reporting that experience of wakefulness, alertness. And it's not listening to the outer world, it's not insomnia, it's inner wakefulness, it's continuity, continuum of sense of self. What does this look like in activity? Now we have 17 people reporting who practice TM and report higher states, 17 TM and not higher states, 17 non-meditating. This is our amplifier here, this little beige box. The hat is where we record brain waves. What differentiated these groups? First, frontal, broadband frontal coherence. Again, the front of the brain, the executive processor, is more integrated throughout the day. More of the frequency alpha. Alpha is a frequency of inner wakefulness, inner orientation. Gamma is when your attention is out. So the person is living life from their inner being. The last is brain preparatory response. How does the brain, when does the brain start to become active? So the blue bar is the non-TM, the yellow bar is higher states. We see in a simple reaction time task, where the person always knows what they have to do, brain preparatory response is higher. This could be that there's more conscious resources there. It could be less noise. So the attention can be on the ongoing process more easily. Look at the choice task. The choice task, in this case, they get one stimuli that gives them some information. Next stimuli gives them more information, and then they can make a decision. This is after the first stimulus. You notice that the non-meditating individuals are actually getting ready to respond even though they don't know what has to happen. They don't know what the correct response is yet. Those living in higher states remain balanced. They remain even. They remain at the balance point, based inner silence, which is where they're living their life. When it's time to respond, then the mind-body becomes active, they respond to the world, and then back to self. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, when he describes activity in cosmic consciousness, he says the thought comes to the mind at the right time. That is, when the mind needs to be focused and needs to be involved in the outside world, the whole mind-body become active to do that and then back into rest. What it leads is to a frictionless flow of life in higher states of consciousness. Now we added these three up, and we have what's called the brain integration scale. It's the frontal coherence, alpha power, brain preparatory response. And here we have our non-meditating individuals based on this scale, short-term TM, higher states. What we have is a measure of growing enlightenment. We have a measure of how the nervous system becomes cultured as people experience the state of yoga, first for a few moments, and then how that state of yoga begins to be permanent. And we're taking this now to look at our, the effect of our education on our students. We find brain integration goes up. We've looked at executives who are very successful. We find they have high brain integration, meaning that they're more connected with their source. Very good. This is last study, which is looking at what's going on inside. Those people with low brain integration tend to describe themselves in an object referral mode. That is, I'm identified with my thoughts and my actions. We find that more reasoning, happiness, emotional stability is lower. And this is an object referral mode in which all activity is in terms of outside objects. It extends to the self-referral mode. This is where the state of yoga is experienced and predominates. The self is independent of thoughts and actions. The self is a non-involved foundation, which is always there, which is continuing throughout day and night, upon which experience is falling. They also, people who have higher brain integration, who describe themselves in this way, have higher levels of more reasoning, happiness, emotional stability, and so on. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm going to stop now to see if there's any questions. Here's my contact information, my email, my website.
Dr. Travis, first of all, thank you for enlightening us and sharing your presentation. because I think it helped us a lot to visualize what you were explaining, especially all of the scientific parts, the different types of brain waves and how the brain connects. A lot of times, those of us in the yoga and meditation fields, we focus on our sadhana practices and we take it on faith that something is happening. And your research shows exactly what's happening in the brain, and thus that makes that union, that's actually the yoga between the brain and the heart or the faith. And this session was really brilliant because it helped us to get a direct understanding of the benefits that we are experiencing. And as Anuradha ji says, we become positively brainwashed for consciousness. So there are a number of questions. I'm going to try to bring all of them together as quickly as possible. The first is, I would like to start off the question and answer section with a personal question about yourself. Can you tell us more about what brought you into the yoga field, what brought you to the Maharishi University and into transcendental meditation?
Yes, I was in a theater group. I was stage manager. And we would tour during the summer, and I was in charge when we got to a place at 2 to have a show up at 7. Some days, my mind was very clear, like everything was there, I just had to check off the boxes. Some days, I just couldn't get started. My mind was just really foggy. So I really experienced some days there was more of me there than before. And so that's what inspired me to investigate meditation practices. When I went to an introductory lecture on transcendental meditation, and they spoke about this vertical range of the mind of deep inner silence and surface activity. And with transcendental meditation, you explore inner silence. It really resonated with my experience. And that's why I was inspired to learn TM. And I've been practicing it now for 48 years. And each meditation is completely luscious and enjoyable.
Wonderful. And I think also some people would like to know, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi is very well known in the West, especially in the US, because he was based in Iowa for a long time. Now, though he was born in India. But can you tell us a little bit more about who is Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was his teacher, and how does one start with TM?
Yes, so he was born in Jabalpur. He has his degree in physics. His main driving desire was to find a guru. And his guru was Brahmananda Saraswati, who was Shankaracharya of Jyotirmat during World War II. He was instrumental in having a number of yagyas in 1944, which probably contributed to the ending of the war, increasing peace. And when his guru died, Maharishi was in silence for 2.5 years in Uttarkashi, as is the usual thing to do. And he had a thought to go to southern India. And he went there from Uttarkashi all the way to southern India. And this was in 55, 56. And he was just there visiting temples. And then someone asked him to speak. And so he spoke. And what he spoke is what Gurudev enlivened in him, that the nature of life is to grow. That purpose of life is expansion of happiness. That transcending, contacting our intimate self is effortless. It shouldn't be a struggle. And so he spoke about this and people said, well, I'd like to have this experience. And he innocently started to teach. And that's how the whole thing happened. And he taught for 2 years in southern India. There was a conference of luminaries in 57, 58, and Maharishi just summarized all of his experience teaching. And he said, if there's so many different groups and languages in India, he said, if all these different groups of people in India, and especially householders like you and I who have responsibilities, can profit from my transcendental deep meditation, the whole world should be able to profit from it. And he just got this huge applause. And so he said, from the response of nature, I'm beginning this movement to spiritually regenerate the world. And then he started going around the world and teaching TM. So he had that one desire to bring the state of yoga, of enlightenment to the whole world. And that's what he worked on tirelessly to his death in 2008. To learn more about transcendental meditation in Delhi and all of the large cities, there's people teaching transcendental meditation. If you go on transcendental meditation into Google search, I'm sure you'll find a group close to you.
Great. I think several people from this group may look into that. Yes, the next question is, where does Advaita or self-inquiry, such as from the lines of people like Ramana Maharishi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, fall, and what is the effect of that on the brain?
Yes, so Advaita is typically, and we can tell by the brain waves where it is, it's typically in the realm of focused attention. And that is the attention is very much not wandering. You're keeping the attention on the idea, the essence, the question which you're having. What it's doing to the brain, remember, you're sharpen the knife and use the knife. Other meditations have their value. You're learning how to intellectually analyze issues. But to actually experience the transcendent, you have to transcend the steps of your meditation practice. In Advaita meditation, to actually experience yoga, you have to transcend the intellectual steps that you're doing. And what happens is that will happen almost spontaneously, that the mind is being kept very sharply to consider a specific line of inquiry, and at some point, you give up, the mind's tired. In the process of giving up, you transcend. Suddenly you understand what's the reason for all of my focused attention, and you get up the next morning and you focus even harder because you want to have that experience more. And the harder you experience, the further away it comes. But it's very valuable for sifting and understanding what is the range of possible relationships of me with the world around me. Just sharpen the knife along with using it. Add transcendental meditation, and you find that the progress of the mind for understanding the world around us is much freer, it flows more spontaneously, and you get very deep insights.
Great, thank you so much. I'd like to take one last question. I think a lot of people are asking about traditional mantra japa and how will it also have similar effects on the brain waves, and they're asking that about mudra as well. Do we practice mudra during the meditation, and how does that impact? I'm sure you can also point us to some great literature on the same, but if you can give us a brief response for now.
Yes. The bottom line is what you do with the mind, both with mudra and mantra. If chanting of the mantra is involved with meaning, the attention is going to remain on the level of meaning. And it's going to enrich whatever is the meaning that God is a creator and is the essence of who we are. That's a wonderful idea to have in your mind. And so that will enrich the thinking level. But if you don't transcend, you'll never experience what is the intent of that mantra. And so whatever you're doing, same way with mudra, if you're doing the mudra in a focused way and you have your full attention on where your fingers are and where your back is and so on, it's going to probably look like focus attention, gamma, EEG, because the attention is there. But if that process can be done in an automatic manner, and so you actually transcend the steps of the meditation practice, it could lead to the state of yoga. And what we have with the brainwaves is a way that we can answer that in a very neutral way, not a charged semantic, my way, your way type discussion, but more, well, let's see how the brain is being used. Let's see what's being developed. Hope that helped.
Great. Okay, we're going to take a few more questions. How can one control the part of the brain or improve its function in the case of an illness or problems connecting to the brain and body?
Excellent question. Again, keep in mind the brain is a river and not a rock. So let's take something like post-traumatic stress. What's happened with post-traumatic stress is a very traumatic experience has clicked on the part of the brain, the amygdala, which registers fearful, threatening experiences. This has happened through the experience. The brain has changed. But now, the amygdala is permanently on. So when you're with friends, you're thinking, oh, what's wrong? Something's going to, how are they perceiving me? There may be an accident happening. Your mind is filled with these thoughts. How do you turn it off? You turn it off with another experience. And what we found with people practicing transcendental meditation, post-traumatic stress symptoms go down. Suicidal thoughts go down. Ideations go down. Because what you're doing is you're transforming the brain because you're giving it a new experience. Trauma created a very localized processing. Transcending creates this more global experience. So that's the bottom line for anything. Your brain is a river, not a rock. Every experience that you have is imprinted in physical form in the structure and functioning of your nervous system.
Okay, so I think now we have a follow-up to a previous question and a previous answer about the mantra. Does chanting a devotional mantra with focus lead to better neural activity?
What it's going to do is lead to characteristic activity. I don't think we can call it better or worse. What's found is compassion meditation. So it's similar to chanting with devotion. It actually enlivens your emotional system. So you're more emotional, you register more deeply every emotional experience, both positive and negative. It's just that however you use your brain during your meditation, that's how it's going to be in activity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Travis, for sharing so much of your research and your time today.
So we invite you to once again join us for a very exciting day. We have Smita Mallaya, who will be leading our session in the morning in the 7 to 8 a.m. slot. Smita Mallaya is a senior mind-body intervention specialist at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Research Center. She's been there for nearly a decade and has been involved in providing yoga therapy in the post-traumatic care situation in the cancer patients. So she will be sharing her experiences, and her topic is wellness in cancer from surviving to thriving. I think it's one of the most interesting sessions because we are looking into wellness from all the different dimensions. No aspect of life can be left out of this. Therefore, I invite you to join this. In the we have Noel Milia, who is the director of Cefito, France, and is also the founder of Kailasha Yoga Center in Bretagne, in France. She will be leading a practice session on distilling joy, extension, and opening. This will be a session both in English and French. So I invite all our French friends from France or French-speaking friends to please join us and make use of this offering. She's the daughter of Rodolphe Milia, who led a session on pranayama earlier last week. And in the evening, we have one more very, very wonderful person, Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, who is the founder of Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement, and he's also the founder of GRAM, a public policy center. He is one of the known figures in the field of social reform, public policy, activism, and he's also an author of 2 wonderful books. So he will be sharing his views on what he calls it as enlightened leadership, a way of leadership that evolves from yogic perspectives. So he'll be with us for the evening session between 7 to 8 p.m. So please do join us. As we shared yesterday, all the sessions are so interesting. We have the best of the people coming on to our platform. So we request you to kindly invite at least 10 people to join us, because as a platform, Zoom webinar platform, we can accommodate more than 10,000 people. So we have no limitations of numbers. We have no limitations of the kinds of guests and speakers who are coming on. So more the merrier. We want to reach out to as many people as possible. So please invite, please inspire as many people to join us. And with this, I hand it over to Soumya ji to take it forward.
Great. Thank you so much to Indica Yoga for hosting this session. And I would like, I think it would be very nice if Dr. Frederick, if you can give us some final parting message, what we, whatever you think is appropriate, but if you can also talk about, again, how to get involved with TM.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Thank you very much for that video. It was very well done. Just want to leave you with that understanding. Yoga is the complete settling of the activity of the mind. You embrace meditations that are structured to transcend, so you can experience a state of yoga many times during the day. And by meditating and acting, you can bring the state of yoga out into daily activity. This is the birthright. This is why we're on earth. So look up Transcendental Meditation. Enjoy the practice. Enjoy your life. Thank you again for having me as part of your conference. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. And for those of you in the audience, you know, Dr. Frederick Travis has already given his contact information. So I know we were not able to answer everyone's questions. So if you would like to get your questions answered, please reach out to him directly.
Yes, I'm happy to answer your questions. Don't feel shy.